how do I get my money back? Nick, the floor is yours.
Thanks, George. A nice, easy question to start. I also am conscious that I'm the one in between us and the coffee break, so I will try and keep it as light as possible. So as it says on the screen, I'm Nick Smarts. I'm the Director of Blockchain Intelligence at Crystal Blockchain. We are a blockchain intelligence company. We provide a tool that's sold to law enforcement and financial institutions that allows them to screen transactions and sort of follow the flow of funds around inside the blockchain space. Those of you who have been watching the news will know that there's been a fair amount of movement in cryptocurrency over the past sort of 72 hours. It's been a bit of a wild ride, to say the very least. And this, we think, will see a rise in what I'm going to discuss this morning. So the question is, can I get my money back? And talk about the impossibilities of crypto asset fund recovery. With the rise of cryptocurrency, in the past sort of 6 years, there's been a corresponding rise in thefts and hacks. Like, it's often sought by criminals for lots of reasons, and it's very difficult to be clawed back because of the nature of how blockchain works. That hasn't stopped, however, a fairly savage group of, I would describe them as ambulance chasing recovery people turning up saying, we can get the money back for you, there's no problems whatsoever, and we'll do it. But first, let's sort of unpack why crypto is so useful for hacks and scams. And it's a bit of an interesting one. And it's certainly unsurprising that throughout the time I've been here, I hear cryptocurrency and scam within about 2 words of each other at an anti-scam conference. And that's a real problem. So as an industry, this is an existential threat to us. So, those of you who believe that blockchain is the future of payments or have like a vested interest in Bitcoin, they should take this more seriously, because the more these things happen, the more the industry looks bad and the less people have confidence in it. And other market forces like we had in the past 72 hours are really bad for confidence, but they massively undermine, what is potentially quite a credible project, at least in my own belief. So why do scams happen in crypto assets? And I certainly should imagine a lot of you here know why they happen, but principally it's the perceived high return on investment. The idea that if you invested, $10 in 2009, it would now be worth, maybe less, but, many hundreds of thousands of dollars now. Like, the idea of rags to riches is a very endearing story. And certainly the scammers love this. They say, okay, we've got this new project, we've got this new token, it's got all this endorsement. Elon Musk's talking about it, which has always been the go-to guy for crypto scams, unfortunately for him. And that's the idea. And they're very sensitive to the financial climate and the markets they operate in. The idea that, you can just, with a small amount of money, put your money in a project and suddenly it'll take off tomorrow is very alluring for people, who are hard up and looking for a way out. It also is important too, because regulation is particularly patchy. There is a lot of regulation missing for a very long time. There is a huge amount of regulation around traditional financial investment products. Cryptocurrency sort of turned up at one point, and a lot of its early proponents were like, we don't need regulation. It's sort of a Darwinistic sort of thing. We can get away with it for long enough. But as time's moved on, regulations turned up, and it's coming in waves. So the initial bout of regulation around cryptocurrency was about know your customer. And there's a huge argument in cryptocurrency circles about whether or not it was allowed for a private company to suddenly start asking for identity documents and registration documents for an individual opening an account. And, that's sort of been addressed now, because the original factor repetition was cryptocurrency and drugs, cryptocurrency and crime. That's sort of gone away now, and now it's moved on to cryptocurrency and scams. But we now need consumer protection regulation. We need more regulation around the protecting of people's money and how to get it back. And the final point is something I think that we as an industry in cryptocurrency need to do a better job of, which is fighting through jargon. And the technology is not widely well understood. Like, we talked today about DNS and DNSSEC and sender policy frameworks and everything else that we can use to combat domain abuse. These are technology words that are understood by a technical audience. Where if I go and ask my mum and say, hey, do you know what, BGP is, or do you know what DNS is? She's got no idea. She doesn't know what domain hijack is. We as an industry and people fighting scammers need to be better at how we articulate this kind of literacy. And that's really how you deal with it, right? If you can tell to someone how easy it is to do this kind of stuff, maybe there'll be a little bit more suspicion. The way I sort of look at it is that a scam, and if you've ever heard of a chap called James Randi, he's quite a famous magician turned cynic, cynic, that's probably the wrong word, skeptic, I should say, sorry. He says that the idea of magic is I'm going to lie to your face and you're going to enjoy it because we both accept that this is true, right? We both agree that you're going to lie to me and that's fine. And a magic trick is the idea is that I suspend belief, but you know that it's not real what's happening. The idea of a scammer is, or a fraud, is the idea that you don't know that I'm lying to you. I'm going to pretend it's actually the truth, that what I'm telling you is right, and I'm going to carry on with it. So I think for us, we need to ruin their magic tricks. We need to show all of the inner workings of how they do it. And the biggest weapon in that is understanding more about the underlying technology and making it more accessible to a non-technical audience. And in this case, we are now combining two worlds: the financial services world, which is absolutely, rife with technical words like liquidity and arbitrage and, pools and smart contracts and things that people just cannot comprehend on a simple level, and technology world. And we're saying blockchain, and we're saying hashes and cryptography, and what does this all mean? And it's a wonderful fertile ground for a scammer to turn up because, well, how do you know what anything is? You don't. In addition to scams, hacks are also incredibly common, and they're a very high value target for opportunistic hackers, because the funds that you steal are really easy to move really fast. Like, one of the benefits of the blockchain payment infrastructure is it's really fast for payments, which is fantastic if you're a hacker, because you can move your money very, very fast to a third party. And then to add insult to injury, this third party might not even care about who you are. Although increasingly ones that allow the settlement or conversion of currency into fiat currency are asking lots of questions. And I really think, the biggest barrier for these guys now is the financial institutions who bank cryptocurrency businesses asking a lot more of their clients and saying, okay, well, you can have an account with us for fiat settlements, but we want you to give us more information about how you do your due diligence, how you protect your customers, how we know that you're not taking liberties with our accounts. Similarly, malware is spread specifically targeting crypto assets. We know that a very prolific North Korean hacking group, Lazarus, really loves to go after cryptocurrency itself because, again, it can move very quickly. So it specifically goes after crypto businesses. This year alone, there have been $2 billion worth of crypto hacks. Again, that's an older figure. That's probably changed since the market conditions have changed over the past sort of 72 hours, again, sadly. But still, it's a high value target, a very high payoff for them. And again, extortion and phishing scams also like crypto assets too. They're really helpful. I'd like to draw your attention to the email picture we have there. That's actually someone impersonating our CEO, Marina, and sending a message to one of our sales colleagues saying, hey, can you please send $2,500 to this cryptocurrency address? I really applaud the hubris of this hacker, because you don't really send the cryptocurrency wallet address to a blockchain intelligence firm because we're going to go look for you. Unfortunately, in this case, this guy had already stolen 2.8 Bitcoin since November 2020. We looked at the address and obviously we did some bits and pieces on it. However, what we are able to do as a company is to take that information. We have industry groups. There's a lot of internal work that goes on that isn't necessarily a public sector thing. It's more something we do ourselves. And we talk to our partners at exchanges and say, hey, this address has been associated with a scam. If any money comes from it, you want to block it or you want to do something about it. And people who use our tools, for example, have visibility of this, and they can file through the traditional financial reporting systems, suspicious transaction reports, suspicious activity reports, and maybe we can catch some of these people fairly quickly. Final thing as well, red line stealer is like a classic bit of malware that often gets loaded onto people's computers, phishing in darker parts of the internet. Again, hackers also get caught up in this too. Okay, but let's move on to the main effort of this presentation. What do I want to talk about? We know that scams and hacks are common and they're all over the place, but these are the guys I worry about more, because they promise to the people who've been victims of this, who already feel the shame of, being a victim of fraud. We talked a lot about, like that, I suppose it's Dunning-Kruger, isn't it? Like the idea that the people with the most confidence, the least qualified to understand. In this case, people who've been victims of hacks or scams now want to go and get some help back from somebody. And they often look for a private solution because maybe that's an opportunity. We know that there's a lack of capability in law enforcement, and that's sort of like comparable to regulators too. That they don't have the tools yet to deal with this stuff because it takes a long time, and we understand that as an industry that we need to help more. So people take matters into their own hands and they go to private solutions, and unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who are trying to take advantage of this. And I feel now, particularly with, let's take the example of FTX, this exchange that's, for want of a better phrase, has gone under over the past 72 hours. People will be going now and touting their wares to say, hey, I can get your money back. Have you lost money in this? There'll be that. Whenever there is a large breach or a hack or something like that, there are always these guys on Twitter saying, hey, I can get your money back, or go and speak to my friend. And we'll talk about them in a second. But there's definitely a strong motivation for victims to ask for help from non-official sources. And again, the idea that a crypto asset investigation in law enforcement might take years to complete, but I've just lost my life savings. Like, when am I ever going to see it again? And similarly, the lack perhaps of mutual assistance between jurisdictions might make it difficult to get my money back. How do I deal with it? I just want to draw your attention again. So I took this from an Instagram fund recovery service. This is obviously a professional one because he's got C++ programming experience, and that's how he's good. If he'd have wrote JavaScript or Python, we'd know he's a scammer. But because he said C++, he's legit. Also, I like the idea of forgotten crypto wallets. Like, I didn't even know I had it, and now someone's told me where it was. Maybe he can do car keys next. Okay, so what are the options? I sort of categorize them into two major parts. One of them is the professional ones, who are perhaps the worst because they offer like legal or technical support. You can do like civil recovery action. You can take someone to civil court, maybe sue them for the money back. Many of them have also claimed experience in other types of fraud, like binary options or Forex trading. They have very convincing websites with legitimate looking domains and emails. Sometimes they even have actual registrations or even legal premises. And they usually require an upfront fee, which is never actually returned to the people who have been scammed. So pay us $10,000 and we'll get your money back for you. No win, no fee. But guess what? We're going to take your money for you and just run, because that's how we work. The alternative then is, the perhaps more silly versions, but the hackers for hire, who claim technical expertise to recover lost funds. They claim to do private key recovery, and we'll talk about that in a second, or hacking lost password accounts. Oh, I've forgotten the account password to my Binance account. I'm going to hack it for you. Very prolific on social media, many across multiple channels. What we tend to see them is then cross-posting. So they'll post on Twitter to go and look at this Instagram profile, probably to try and dodge some of the content moderation that goes on. And they usually try and get access to victims' devices to try and steal money or charge an upfront fee. They're also particularly nasty. And if you can see on this thing here from Instagram, you can see there are gratitude posts. People are being recruited on Upwork or Fiverr to do testimonials to give them the veneer of credibility. Again, what the platforms in this regard are doing to stop these guys, I would like to know too, is how are they blocking these guys giving testimonials that are supporting what they do? I want to finish then on the technical realities of private key recovery and why it doesn't work. A private key is 256 bits. I will just caveat now, I'm not a cryptographer or a serious mathematician, so I am not going to butcher this too much. And I'm sure those of you who have better understandings of hashing algorithms and cryptography can run rings around me. But generally speaking, a private key is 256 bits of information. That means there are 2 to the power 256 possible combinations of private key. That is 1 with 77 trailing zeros after it possible combinations. So you would then have to get a machine to guess every single one of those combinations until you find the right one to crack a private key. So assuming optimizations, and the statistics haven't been updated because there's been some developments in supercomputers, it would take about 0.65 billion years to crack a private key at current standards. Although according to some advances in supercomputers, the Moore's law of increasing in processing power, we think in 60 years, maybe you can do it in 1.13 years in 60 years time. So if you've got 62 years roughly to spare, maybe you'll be able to crack a private key. But the technology by then in hashing an algorithm should have moved on too. So when the guy had this picture here that says, hey, look, I can recover your private key, and here's a YouTube video that lasts 3 minutes, I'm a bit dubious about this too. But again, we talked earlier about the lack of literacy, understanding of these things, and how you can't crack a private key so easily. It's really important that people understand that, because we watch the movies and we'll just plug the hard drive, the USB stick in, and there'll be some green lines like you see on the screen here, and we'll press a button and files decrypted or whatever else. It just doesn't work like that. And again, we need to be, as people fighting this stuff, more working on the education side. I'd leave it open for question and answer. I know it's a very quick canter through, but as a call to action, we as a company always want more data. So if you have information on cryptocurrency scams, particularly ones that link websites with addresses, be it whatever blockchain it's on, please feel free to come and speak to me later and we can work something out. That data is absolutely invaluable. The more we label, the harder it is for these guys to cope with us. And we can really stop things. And just on a side note, we also help victims of crime too as a company. It's not always successful. We're very transparent with our clients, but sometimes we do have successes. The faster we can act, the faster we can do something. And, you know, even in some cases, we've had some pretty good successes. Over the weekend, Andrew, my colleague, was able to stop $260,000 worth of transactions because we have relationships with the exchanges, because we can say to them, say, hey, this is a scam. Here's the proof. Stop the money. And then we'll catch up with you. And then maybe we can get people's money back. But again, it's not a guarantee. It's not always working. It's not always possible. But as an industry, we need to take steps to address it. Thank you.
Thank you.